Hey guys, welcome back to Make Way Life Coaching. My name is Sarah and I'm the Life Coach here. It's Boundary Work Wednesday. So right now I'm just kind of telling you what I know about boundaries and how they changed my life. Starting next week, we're actually going to get into, I'm going to give you an assignment. It's free homework to change your life. How exciting is that? If you're like me, you're like, oh, I love homework. Yay. If not, you don't want to do the homework, just show up anyway. You're going to learn something. Okay, last week we were talking about my beautiful illustration. If you missed it, you got to go back to last Wednesday, which was the 3rd. And we talked about how boundaries are an invisible net that helps you protect your yard from crappy neighbor or anybody. And so when they're throwing stuff your way, in this case it was coconuts, you just bounce it right back into their yard. Keep it out of your life. You know what I mean? When they're throwing their crazy crap at you that you just don't even need or want. Okay. I want to talk more about boundaries. The first step with boundaries is setting up the net. It's called setting boundaries. So when you build your net to bounce the coconuts back in the yard, that is called setting your boundary. If you don't know what I'm talking about with the coconuts, please watch last week because I don't want to go over it again. And I don't have to. Okay, my channel, my rules. So, setting the boundary is putting the net up and deciding, yes, I'm going to set the boundary. It's important to me. I'm going to hold it to. Step 2 is holding the boundary. So, in this case, with crappy neighbor, his coconuts are bouncing into your yard and smashing your flowers. So you build your invisible net, but this is actually a real net in this illustration, and it bounces the coconuts back. Okay, so this works in every single situation for every single person. If you're like me, you don't think boundaries can work. They seem impossible, but they do work. And I've been using them the last 12 years, and I'm telling you, it is freedom, my friends. So I'm going to give you an example from my own life. When I first became a mom, actually, I was just talking to a friend about becoming a mom, and she was like, whoa, I was not prepared for how, patriarchal life is, because nowadays, modern women, you're, going through life thinking you're empowered, and people respect you, and everything's equal, and then you have kids, and you're thrust back to, 70 years, and suddenly your spouse, I don't know a lot of exceptions to this. If you think your spouse is an exception, then, I don't know, give him some good sex tonight or something because you have an amazing spouse. But most people I know, they become a mom, and it's now all the child rearing stuff is on them. And people say it's because you have boobs. I've heard that. But guess what? I'm an adoptive mom, so the baby did not come from my body, and there was no breastfeeding, and still thrust back 50 years when I became a mom. And boy, I was shocked and resentful. And I hate being resentful. And so I knew I needed to take action. And luckily, I was in therapy, and I was complaining every week about, my husband, Nick, who's great, but he won't do this, and he won't do this, and I'm cleaning the house, and I'm doing this, and it's I've gone back 50 years, and I'm really mad about it. And she was like, okay, well, what boundary could you put in place to protect your energy and yourself, needing nothing from Nick? Because the thing is, I kept nagging Nick and being like, why don't you help me with this anymore? Why don't you do this anymore? And he was like, well, you're a stay-at-home mom, and I'm doing this. And then later I was working part-time. But that didn't matter because, I don't know, it was just all the kid stuff was on me. And that's common. So, I was shocked by that. But anyway, I was super complaining to him all the time, and it didn't work. He still didn't change. And so finally she was like, you need to put in a boundary, which is the key to boundaries, where you expect nothing from the other person. The boundary is something you are in control of, and it requires nothing of your other person. So, I told my therapist, well, then I guess I should hire a housekeeper and to come every 2 weeks and just do the chores that we used to share, but now they're all on me. And she was like, yeah, you should do that. And I was like, but I shouldn't do that because, it's money, which it is. And she was like, well, I guess you can either be resentful or do it. Do everything yourself and be resentful or do it. And I was like, yes, I'm going to hire a housekeeper. So I totally hired my housekeepers back. I used to have housekeepers when I worked full time. And then I hired them back, and he didn't even notice for like 3 months. And then all of a sudden one day he was like, everything's looking so nice. Did we have housekeepers again? I can't remember how he actually figured it out, but I was like, yes, I hired them back. Isn't it wonderful? And he was like, well, you didn't talk to me about that. And I was like, no, I didn't, because I'm a grown-ass woman, and I chose to do it for myself. And he was like, I cannot believe that, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, honey, I have asked you for help, and you chose not to help me, which means you gave me the full authority over doing all of these things, and I have decided to outsource some of the work, and I have no regrets. So, anyway, 12 years later, we still have them every other week, and God bless those women, because I don't know, they have skills I do not have nor care to foster. And what happened immediately was I dropped my resentment. I took action in a way that I felt honored my needs. It required nothing of my husband. And then I was able to stop being resentful over what I considered to be an unfair division of labor. And that is just one example. I have 8 billion examples, but boundaries are very powerful, and they require nothing. You set the boundary. In this case, I hired the housekeepers. Then you hold the boundary. So when Nick questioned me and kind of trying to shame me into not having housekeepers, I was like, I have decided this, and this is what is going to happen in my life. And then step 3, you accept the consequences. Almost all the time when we set boundaries with somebody, they're not happy about it. Nick was not happy with me, and I was having to accept that he could totally see it differently than me, and that was okay. We did not have to agree, because guess what? We didn't agree about the division of labor changing when I became a mom and had a ton more responsibility. And so we weren't going to agree about the housekeeper, and that's okay. That's what marriage is like sometimes. And I could handle his anger or whatever he was feeling, because I decided to just accept it. My boundary was worth it. This is boundaries. Okay. Come back next week, Boundary Work Wednesday. We're going to jump into the absolute best book about boundaries in the world. It's called Boundaries. It changed my life. And I'm just going to share some examples from that book, and then we're going to start getting into actual boundary work that you can apply to your own life. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any videos. Come back I'll be here Friday talking about the Enneagram, but come back next week for the next installment of Boundary Work Wednesday, because this is where you're going to get your freedom. I promise you. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us. See you on Friday. Bye-bye.